came across this video on Ron Filipkowski's Twitter account. I don't know if you guys follow him, but he is absolutely fascinating to watch. These people, this is a right-wing show, a far-right show at this point, complaining about emails and persecution. Try to figure out how those two things go together. Listen to this.
You also say that Google is suppressing millions of election-related emails. Just in the last month, the committee is accusing the company of marking more than 22 million emails as spam.
Okay, this is Ronna McDaniel on the right. Not sure which one. She's the head of the RNC, which is the Republican National Committee. Basically, it's like the head of the Republican Party. On the left, this is a Fox News host or a Fox Business host or whatever. They're both far right, as far right as it gets practically. So here's the claim. Google is marking marketing emails as spam. How is this happening? What's going on? Is this real persecution or what? What's going on here? Email is very decentralized. It's one of the most decentralized electronic communication devices in existence, in my opinion. I was a software engineer for 6 years before getting into YouTube. And I was one of the people that managed email servers for companies. In fact, I still have clients that I do that for to this day, okay? The way that email works is you have these different companies around the world, Yahoo, Gmail. You can host it yourself, as I did. And they use protocols to send messages to different email addresses. So say you've got telltale@gmail.com, for example. Gmail.com is a top-level domain. So there are like 17 root servers, or there are more than 17 now, but when I was involved in this, I should tell you how long ago this was. There were 17. I think there are hundreds of root servers around the world now that contain data about where somebody wants to go if they're looking up a .com address or a .org address or whatever. So they go to the root servers and they look up .com. And when they get to the .com root server that contains the data they're looking for, they look for Google. They find Google's entry in that root server. I'm describing something called DNS right now. So they find the entry that Google gave to these root servers when they when they bought their domain name, when they registered the information. They gave them something called a name server, and the name server points to an IP address, okay? So when you type google.com, it's eventually directing somebody to an IP address. There's no like moderator in there trying to make sure you're not sending something you're not supposed to. There's no, admin team that can ban you from this thing or that thing or whatever else yet. We're getting there. So you're sending an email to telltale@gmail.com, right? When you send that email, it looks up .com and then it looks up Gmail within that. And then it gets something called MX records, which allow you to send that email to Google's servers or to Yahoo's servers or whoever is hosting the email. I host email currently. Anybody can host email. Anyone. Once it reaches that server, it looks at the email address and it sends the message to that person. That's how it works. Optionally, companies can choose to create a spam filter. Let me tell you a story I discovered one time. I was managing an email server, and I got an alert from Amazon that our systems were being used for nefarious purposes. So I get in there, and I look at a record of every email address that was sent or received by anybody. That's something you can do when you are running your own email server. And I saw a billion examples of like, hi, my name is blah, blah, blah. I'm a Nigerian prince, and all I need is $2,000 to pay the taxes on my inheritance, and then I will receive $3 million and give you half. I saw like a billion of these emails being sent out to like a ton of random email addresses. What they'll do, these hackers, they will get into these systems. They will purchase a list of hacked email addresses. Like I had this app called Park Mobile. I use it to pay parking meters, right? When I lived in Florida for a while. Park Mobile was hacked. They didn't steal credit card information or anything. All they stole was email addresses. Now that doesn't seem very useful to the average person, but when you realize that these Nigerian princes purchase these massive lists of stolen email addresses from hackers to use them for these Nigerian prince scams, it starts to get a lot clearer what they would use these email addresses for. So Amazon contacts me and says, your email server is being used to send out massive amounts of spam to people. You need to put a stop to it. So I changed all the passwords naturally, ran virus scanners and all, malware detectors, all that other good stuff. But I also put a program on there to detect when anything that fits the pattern of the Nigerian prince scam is detected. So it just scans every email that comes in and says, is it asking for money because it's a prince? Is it asking for $3,000 and it'll give you $2 million back or anything like that? If it fits this pattern, put it in the spam folder. They can still receive the email. Just make sure that these people know that it's likely spam. I'm not censoring them. I'm not deleting it. I'm not reading it. I'm not doing any of that. I'm just moving it to a separate folder because it's likely not trustworthy. That's how email works. It's completely decentralized. If you want to mark something as not spam, like if you think that Nigerian prince really isn't a spam emailer, you can go in there and select not spam, and Gmail and Yahoo and all of the others will allow that email through and not send it right to the spam box. There is no censorship here. What these people are banking on their listeners not understanding is that fundamental fact. This is an extremely decentralized system, and it has been since it was invented in the 80s or 90s or something. There is no censorship here. They're banking on their audience not understanding how this works. So with that background in mind, listen to this again. Understanding that there's no censorship here, it's completely decentralized, and they're full of
Just in the last month, the committee is accusing the company of marking more than 22 million emails as spam, including get out the vote messages. You're exploring legal options. What are you going to do?
They're completely full of it. They have no idea what they're talking about if they're really suing Google for like censorship or whatever other thing. If they didn't want to be marked as spam, they shouldn't type emails in that look like Nigerian prince scams. They have to understand that this is an inevitable consequence of basic spam bot detection.
Yeah, so we spent the day on the phone with attorneys yesterday. We are very seriously looking at how we can sue Google.
Great. Well, when you are very seriously suing them, get back to me. I don't give a shit about very seriously looking at. I can't see how this could possibly happen. I mean, there is a whole system of reputation with this. It doesn't just stop at spam bots and, sending things to the spam folder. You can build an email reputation too. I used to communicate with companies all the time and tell them, hey, I'm a reputable organization. I work with this company and we're not soliciting money from people. We're just sending receipts or bills or invoices. That's all we're doing. We're not scamming anybody or anything. Can you please put us on a whitelist? And sure enough, Google did. Gmail would put me on a whitelist. That only does so much. You have to build your reputation. You have to be a reputable organization to be able to make it into the regular inbox, not just the spam folder. And these people have obviously trashed their reputation in the email world, which is what led to this, and they're complaining about it. I'm sorry, you guys are trying to scam your viewers more often than not, and that is why they ended up in the trash folder or in the spam folder. That's what happened. If they don't like that, don't be predatory Nigerian prince scams, basically.
Google controls 53% of the emails in the United States, and they are suppressing right now Republican get out the vote emails ahead of this election. We know.
I don't know if that's true. Google controls 53% of the emails. That does not sound right to me. Maybe, but I'm very skeptical.
Ahead of this election, we know this.
Okay, so the point is they are desperately trying to scream about persecution. They want everybody to believe that they are the most persecuted people alive, that they are mistreated by the big bad corporations, which is honestly really strange to hear from people like this, who generally support corporations in everything, support them over people when it's convenient. It's insane.
Before we continue, I just wanted to mention something. If you like what I do and you want to see me continue to do it, you can support me in a few ways. First, there's Patreon. That's probably the best way. But if you want to get something back for your support, you can check out my Teespring. Or you can check out my Telltale Unfiltered channel. I go through long-form, unhinged sermons from all kinds of people, from Hank Kunneman to Greg Locke to Jehovah's Witnesses. So give it a look. Links are in the description. Okay, now back to the video. Anyway, all right, yeah, that was just a little section I wanted to give. Let's listen to a voicemail.
This is Michael from Texas. I just had a quick question. What is your opinion on stuff like religious-based Christmas carols, like Silent Night, stuff like that? I know there are secular ones, but I just want an opinion on religious ones. Thank you.
Generally, I think it's a bad thing to do things to intentionally remove yourself from cultural events. Same with Halloween. You know, I was just talking about this the other day. There is a large contingent of Christians who have a real problem with Halloween and as a result separate their children from it. Refuse to let them celebrate, refuse to let them do trick-or-treating or any of that stuff. I had a bad experience with being completely isolated from society entirely when I was younger. Couldn't celebrate Christmas or birthdays or Valentine's Day in school, imagine that, or anything. And in my opinion, there's no reason to limit yourself and isolate yourself away from society that way. It's just not helpful. That's just my take on it. So basically, here's the bottom line. Sing whatever song you want. Enjoy life. We only get one go around. That's my take. Thanks for the voicemail.
Hey, Owen. It's Brian from Nova Scotia, Canada, fellow XJW. I may not be your biggest fan, but at 240 pounds, I'm probably getting up there.
No, that's clever. Okay. Thanks.
Anyway, I had a question about your Sodom and Gomorrah claim, where you said that they were destroyed for their treatment of the poor. I'm just wondering where in the Bible it says that, because I've been trying to look it up, and I just end up with vague references to them being sinners and exceedingly wicked. Anyway, thanks. Love the show.
I appreciate it. Yeah, really good question. So the other day I pointed out that Sodom and Gomorrah were not destroyed because of their attachment to the LGBT community or because they were gay or whatever other thing. Wasn't because of that. It was because of their ill treatment of the poor, and this listener wants me to back that up with the facts, so I can do that. Let's take a look. Sodom and Gomorrah, the story starts out, just kind of jumps right into it. It's like, this guy's communing with God, and he says that he's going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, and the guy says, what if there are 50 righteous people there? Would you destroy it then? He says, for 50 people, no. And then he goes down, and he does this all the way down to like 5 or 10 people or something. He says, okay, if you find 10 faithful people there, I'm not going to destroy it. He goes to the city, and he discovers that people there are doing these things that they don't like. And Christians tend to use that as the basis for the belief that Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed for their homosexual lifestyles, quote unquote. In reality, Ezekiel 16, 49, and 50 tell us exactly why they were destroyed. The Bible does not start the story by telling us why God was talking about destroying them in the first place. It just talks about God destroying them, or that he's about to, haggling down to 10 people, 10 righteous people in the city. Here's Ezekiel 16, 49, and 50. Now this was the sin of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters were arrogant, overfed, and unconcerned. They did not help the poor and needy. They were haughty. That's a word I only hear in religious contexts. They were haughty and did detestable things before me. Therefore I did away with them, as you have seen. There is the reason why I say it was because of their ill treatment of the poor. That's why God went in the first place. And not until he got in did he find that they were doing all these other things that they supposedly don't like. So there you go. Thanks so much for the email. I appreciate it.
Hi, Owen. This is Jim in Pennsylvania, and I was wondering what your thoughts would be if Trump were to win the 2024 election. Since he spent 3 years as president campaigning, and he wouldn't be able to run for a third term, how would he spend his time? Just curious. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Interesting question. In my opinion, Trump would spend his time meddling as much as he possibly could. Not in the illegal way or underhanded way, but I mean like just trying to endorse candidates and trying to control the Republican Party to the best of his ability. And eventually he's probably going to hand the anointing down to one of his kids, if you will. That's my guess. Before he dies, on his deathbed, he's going to say, "Oh, I want my supporters to vote for Don Jr." or something like that. I guess time will tell. He does have a full-blown religion built up around him, though, in all seriousness. It's not just like a political party or a cult that's behind him anymore. It is an actual, real, full-blown religious movement. I do not say that lightly. Look at the cover of this book. We're reading this book on my Telltale Reads YouTube channel right now. Donald J. Trump, the Son of Man, the Christ by Helgard Muller. Insane. Absolutely insane stuff. Seriously. It's a religious movement now. No longer just a cult or just a political movement or party. It is a religion now.
Hey, Owen. This is Tony from Texas again. Just when I was sitting here watching your video on the student loan forgiveness, and tends to the people that bitch the most are the first ones to have their hand out when something happens to them. Case in point, look at DeSantis. He was complaining about Biden until Ian's storm kicked at his state's ass, and now he's begging for help. Just wanted to point that out. Thanks, buddy. Keep up the good work. Bye.
Absolutely agree with you on that point. There's a name for this. I forget exactly what it is, but it's where they privatize the profits and socialize the losses. That's the general philosophy. Corporate socialism is the name for that, I think, where they want to earn all the profits and keep them and give them to the shareholders and everything else. But when something bad happens, they want the government to come in and bail them out and give them extra money to help them survive and all that stuff. It's a similar idea with the state of Florida and other Republican politicians. Recently, there's an infrastructure bill passed by Biden and the Democrats in the Senate and the House, I believe. And a bunch of Republicans voted against it and talked shit about it nonstop, publicly, like on TV. They went on Fox News and said, "Oh, this is socialism, it's evil, it's wrong, we can't do this." And guess what happens? The bill passes, so all this money is available for states. All they have to do is apply for the funds, and the Department of Transportation is the branch of the government who decides who gets what, like which state gets what. Guess who came asking the Department of Transportation, cap in hand, for a little money? Rand Paul, of all people, somebody who called this bill socialism, voted against it. I mean, a whole bunch of Republican politicians come out of the woodwork after voting against this bill and send a letter about how much it would help their state. They really want some of this money to fix the infrastructure in their state. Isn't that interesting? They don't care about logical or moral consistency. What they care about is hurting their enemy. That's all they have ever cared about. And it's honestly sad. The example you gave is a perfect one. DeSantis is constantly talking about how evil the Democrats are, voted against aid after Hurricane Sandy hit the Northeast, and now he's coming to Biden cap in hand asking for money. And what does Biden do? Gives him the money, which is the right thing to do. It's just a perfect example of Democrat politicians generally are not scumbags. Like Biden, for example, isn't a scumbag. He wouldn't withhold aid, like deeply necessary aid to save people's lives just to score political points. And Republicans are scumbags. Like Republican politicians are scumbags when it comes to this stuff. They are perfectly willing to let people die because they don't want to give aid. And how would it hurt them? It wouldn't. Wouldn't hurt them at all. It's just simply disgusting. This kind of hypocrisy, this kind of behavior from Republican politicians. It's grotesque and evil and sad. Anyway, thank you so much for the voicemail. I appreciate that.